I don't we don't address that in the ordinances, but I think we can address that when the use permit comes before you. We could look at the site plan, and then you can request or require that they designate an area for a room or an
And I'm
area
just
for
saying,
medical
I'm
marijuana.
giving warning that it needs to be a room. I'm not talking a 10 by 10 or a, it could be somebody, an office. It could be something small.
Do you mean a room with a door?
I do mean a room with a
Okay,
door.
because I'm sure we've got some input on this.
And I think what we'll do is we can address that on a case-by-case
Okay.
basis, looking at their site plan, because they might not have room for enough area for a whole room with a door.
They'll have to figure it out.
But I think we can look at that when the use permit comes before us.
Okay, but could it be denied if they do not have a room? It could be a 3 by 4 room. I'm not talking about anything big, but I want that in District F.
It will be a factor, but I hate to say that we can deny
Okay.
something ahead of time.
Well,
I'd like to wait till
Hopefully
the
they're
public
hearing
hearing.
this loud and clear.
Okay, does the industry want to respond to that?
Because I have other things.
No, we're going to take all the time, but I'd rather you get,
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Brager. Andrew Jolly for the record. Since a specific room was not a requirement in the medical program,
That was a mistake.
my recommendation would be to allow a period of time for these rooms to be constructed. I personally have no problem doing that, and we have provided for that in our recommendations to the Green Ribbon Panel to have a dedicated area. But we did have this very debate, and the issue came down to the facilities that are built today did not have that requirement when they were constructed. So this is going to take construction and planning in order to meet this requirement. So if we could have a period of time to implement the room, even though we are already providing today a dedicated area.
Is that provided, and is the cities, did they require an area? I think we made a mistake, I'm going to say I made a mistake not doing it. In the cities, do you have to have a dedicated area?
The
For
city
those
of
who
Las
do that?
Vegas, I'm not sure what the requirement is.
can someone affirmatively answer what's required in the other cities?
They don't.
They don't require.
Okay, I was just curious.
Armin, you want to just identify yourself for the record?
For the record, Armin Yamanijan, 3790 Paradise Suite 200. The others do not require a room.
And here's what's interesting, is that and I think I met with 60 or 80 people, but the ones that were going to be in District F, those questions were asked, and they said for medical patients, we will have they didn't always say area, room. So if someone wanted to walk in and, they have no knowledge or know anything. But anyway, I won't belabor it, but during the other factor, I'm just telling you in District F, if you are in District F, and I'm not opposed to I'm not unreasonable, I don't believe I've been unreasonable, that there will need to be a room if I can make that happen. So I'm going to go by legal, but there will need to be a 3 by 4. I'm not talking about something huge. You may have an extra office you find you don't need right now. That might suffice for that room, and business license will have to check that out to make sure that you have it before you have that it's coming at a point in time, 2 months, 3 months. So anyway, that's one thing that to me is extremely important. Something else that I think would be very important, whether it's the Green Ribbon Panel that stays active to find out whether it's some of you and then outside people, whether it's the medical users, because the biggest thing that's important to me is the medical aspect of this, and I'm not going to let up on it. I think the mistake is that all of a sudden now we've heard seed to sale. Now, on June 15th, it's one thing. On June 16th, if you walk into an establishment and you say, you're not a medical card person because of what you have to do to get it, but you say, I have cancer, and what will work over here, and it's the same product as now I'm being told here is the same product. But when I met with people, it was not the same product. Oh no, this will do only cancer or glaucoma or epilepsy. And now all of a sudden it's the same product. I really disagree. I don't have enough knowledge, and I'm honest about that, and do what they need for their medical situations.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Yamanijan?
Commissioner, Armin Yamanijan for the record. I believe that in our plan for our dispensary, and I've spoken with a couple of other members of the Green Ribbon Panel and a couple of dispensaries who are not on the Green Ribbon Panel, and we fully anticipate having separate windows that are medical specific to ensure that your concerns are met and addressed. We obviously do not. I think there has been this misconception that dispensaries are going to turn their backs on the medical patients, which I don't know where that came from, but everyone that I've spoken to, we have no intention of turning our back on the medical patients. If anything, we want to make it just as seamless and as easy of a process as it was prior to July 1st.
Okay.
So we will have windows that have signs on them that say...
You will, but that doesn't mean everybody will. You're
Well,
speaking for yourself.
Unfortunately, I can't
No,
speak
I
for
know,
everybody.
that's what I'm saying. You will.
Yes, ma'am.
So could I ask another question of?
Sure.
A question of legal? Rob, in regards to that, when they're coming in for the retail, is that something we can impose, that they have a medical aspect that stays strong for the medical patients? Because if I were, I'm not either one, but if I were a medical patient and the card is X amount of dollars and you have to give your social and know who you are and do all this stuff, maybe you're hoping the retail side, even though it's 10%, which I don't think was enough, I think it should have been 25 or 30, you might feel like over time it's not worth getting the card. Will they be treating, they'll be treating people now with retail marijuana versus medical. Can we ensure in giving them their establishment that they can have a medical window?
Yes, at zoning, we can look at the site plan,
Okay.
consider it on a case-by-case basis, consider whether or not a designated area is required and whether or not they should have a separate window. But I think we should reserve judgment for when we consider each application on a
Okay.
case-by-case basis.
Okay. They're probably all wanting to leave District F after I'm done. But this is just very serious to me. So one thing, and this might be that Clark County, that Ms. Holloway might need to answer, are we going to have, and this is where I think I'll kind of cross over here, where the green ribbon panel could be extremely beneficial, along with maybe some other people sitting on it, not just the industry, for the monitoring of creating some more rules and regulations, for having, if someone breaks the rule, that we have some sanctions and ordinances that we make sure that we're following safety, that we're following all the guidelines that we put forth. And I think that the panel could be, even though it's kind of the fox watching the hen house, that you could be responsible in doing this. And I've sat with all of you. I won't say all, but I would say 98%. And I feel like it has changed a little bit. Is that something we're going to do? Graduate it, you make them, mistakes happen. And I think forgiveness is a good thing. But the same mistake happening, or selling something you shouldn't, or advertising something you shouldn't, how are we going to do that?
Yes, Jacqueline Holloway, Director of Business License. Commissioner, I think we have established after our presentation from the Green Ribbon Panel, it was one of our recommendations to continue to meet so that we can address any patterns or any issues, jump over any hurdles that we didn't anticipate. So yes, we will plan to do that, and I believe the County Manager's Office has agreed to continue the funding for that effort.
Okay. And then if we go around again, or I think of something else, I'll do it. So we've discussed the separate rooms and giving time elements for that. We've discussed the medical window and making sure our medical people are not forgotten. Hoping you have educated people at your retail, and a person comes up that doesn't have a card, but they tell you they have cancer. Here's my situations. What can I use? But now that it's going to be the same marijuana across the board, I still have a problem with that, because that's not what it was said. And what are we doing, and adding the non-industry people to that panel to where they can help monitor what's going on in there? How are we looking at, I had one more thing that was really important to me. Pick it up from where I left off.
Okay, I've got Commissioner Scow, then June Kiliani, then Kirkpatrick. I didn't hear you. You want to go quicker? Got to raise your hand and holler at me.
I'll think of my other thing here, though. Oh,
Thank you.
Nope. You got to wait till your
I
next
know.
turn.
I'm
You got to
good.
wait till your next
I'm
turn.
Good. I'm good.
Sorry.
Was I
Go give
next?
it to someone down there.
Okay, give it to somebody down there and ask your question if you want.
Am I
Commissioner
next?
Scow, you're ready.
Okay. Well, actually, Commissioner Brager covered the two major items that I have as well. But I'm wondering, when we're talking about consultation, I feel strongly the same way, that there needs to be an area set aside for that. In the business license policy on page 13, it does say a retail marijuana store licensed under this chapter must accommodate a customer's request for a confidential and private consultation within the available space. And it seems, I would like to strengthen that a little bit, because it just kind of sounds like
agree.
in the corner. So I was thinking, in a separated area, or at least having something so that people know when they come in that that's going to be required. I don't think it's fair to just say, we're going to require this when we get to the special use permit for that, or maintaining a separate line or whatever for medical versus retail. I think somehow it has to be in the policy so people know what to expect. Otherwise, we're kind of ambushing, I feel like.
One of the considerations.
Okay, the booth it's not coming on.
It's on now.
No.
One of the considerations from the Green Ribbon Advisory Panel was the fact, and I think Mr. Jolly mentioned that the medical was really not necessarily designed for the anticipation of the retailer or the anticipation of having to separate the customers. However, we were working with language because we knew the importance of having the privacy and the confidential consultation area. I am hearing from the industry that adding the language in a separated area may not be a problem with them, but we'll let the industry speak to that.
Andrew Jolly, yeah, again, it's not that we don't want that. It's that it wasn't a requirement when we built our existing facilities. We all want it. The industry got behind AB 422, which passed yesterday, which is the medical preservation bill. We're very much in support of all the points you're making right now. And so to provide a specific room would require construction for most facilities. And so we would just ask to have some time to do that.
To be set in the ordinance, the expectation.
Yes, ma'am.
So whatever wording we could add there that would make that either in a separate area or something.
Yes, ma'am. We will work on that.
Okay.
And we'll receive direction from the board to let businesses know how long you want to give them in order to do whatever retrofitting is necessary.
And I feel the same way about, and I know the panel was very strong in saying we want to maintain the medical as the retail.
The minimum, Mr. Tar checked with the building department, and it is 70 square feet. So a 3x4 would not work. So it would have to be a 70 square feet room if it's a separate room to be considered and so that's only by 7 by 10, which is not real big. But if we're going to add that language to business license, then we'll have to add just a note either to refer to business license or something to that effect.
And I don't think we want to make this burdensome on anybody, but I just think there needs to be a designated partition or a space.
Well, we can discuss that thing,
Yeah,
but
we
Rob,
can
or Bob, you got comments on this? I see you both looking perplexed.
No,
Not
we
that you
were
were
talking
perplexed.
about the ordinance. I still think the better practice would be is that when the use permit comes forward and we can see their site plan and what their plans are for separate areas and separate windows, that we can consider it on a case-by-case basis and see what area is adequate and look at it but not now, not try to amend this ordinance, because I don't think we can amend the zoning ordinance right now to include that, but I do think that we can attach that as a condition to a use permit.
Okay. So how's a person supposed to know when they're going into the, in the future? I'm talking after the 18 months when.
We can come back and amend
And
this
we can
ordinance,
come
but
back
today,
and
what
amend.
I'm saying
Okay.
today is that this is outside the scope of the ordinance we have published.
I see.
We can come back with a future amendment and come back with specific regulations that address that issue.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, Mr. Sibley and Mr. Ritter, I think, wanted to address that. Is that why you walked up here?
Scott Sibley for the record. I don't think the industry is opposed to a separate room. There may be a few people that have size restrictions, and so I do support staff's recommendation that we take them on a case-by-case basis and, and go from there. I mean, if you look at like a CVS or a Walgreens, you have patients that go in there and talk about, their health stuff. They don't have a separate, so it's, I think take them case by case and just look at who has, space and can do it.
Mr. Ritter, did you want to say something about the same issue?
John Ritter for the record. I just wanted to mention that one thing you may want to think about, and we're going to be doing at our dispensaries is that when you check in, and you have to go through a check-in process whether you're a medical patient or a recreational patient, that we're going to prioritize a medical patient. So if they have a medical card, they'll essentially jump the line. And there's been a lot of discussion with patients about the fact that they don't want to wait behind 20 tourists when they're used to getting their medication. Maybe they need to get their medication weekly. So it's just a thought, something we're going to be doing in our dispensaries.
Thank you. Anything more, Commissioner?
I did visit the Grove the other day, and I was appreciative that you're really giving precedence for those medical patients.
Okay. I've got Commissioner Giuliani and Kirkpatrick, but that being said, I want you to know that in 15 minutes we're going to have to take a recess for the auction to set up, and then we're going to come back to this item, but I want to make sure I get something from Commissioner Kirkpatrick now because she's been very patient on the far end there.
So Mary Ann did rule differently. We have to do it at 1.
There's people on the phone for the internet auction,
gotcha.
and we don't
Okay.
want to lose those bidders. That's the problem.
Okay, I'll start out in item 70, page 13 that Commissioner Scow mentioned. With no disrespect, Rob, I think you could actually even do something there, private consultation with at least a partition and at least get that language in. Then we come back as a case by case, but that way people know and they're starting to plan for it. So that's something that possibly could be looked at. Then on page 17, tell me again, Jacqueline, what a retail marijuana support business provides products or services, including but not limited to. What is that section, and why is real estate and financial services included in there?
We have under our medical, we license any other businesses that provide services to MMEs. And we wanted to do that to make sure that everyone in the industry was appropriately background investigated and that sort of thing. So, for example, we may have magazine companies. Well, those magazine companies need to come to the department to get a license to do that. And so then we issue them a support business license. So we're just carrying that over from the medical.
Okay, so they're not necessarily setting up business in.
That is correct. They
There.
could be providing raw materials, packaging, goods, labels, those kinds of things. So if they're involved in the industry, then they are required to have a form of a support business that we can track.
And that's a special license that we created when
That
we
is
did the
correct.
medical MMEs. Okay. Page 30, the community benefits. Now, a lot of people did come before us and said, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, or I'm going to give something back, or and I know some discounted for veterans and some discounted medical, but I think they have to pay the full tax now, so that's something you'll all have to look at industry-wise, because it's going to get a little bit expensive in some cases, so I just throw that out there. But what else, because that's the term we used in the Raiders issue, was the community benefits, and this is different from that, but it's sort of similarly intended. So this is where pretty much they were going to either give to charities, or what exactly?
Well, how we have structured this is we wanted to make sure that in a number of areas in the ordinance, we made some expressed comments and requirements related to providing and maintaining and protecting the patients, the medical patients. So you will see that we're basically saying here that one of the goals of the master marijuana establishment license must be to provide medical patients access to medical marijuana. Another main goal must be to educate the consumers. So we are requiring for the retail establishments to have an active education program, educating not only the medical but also the retail. And there are some important education campaigns we think we need to have, such as go low, go slow, those sorts of things. So you're just not walking in, getting a product and not being educated on the product or the...
Similar to what pharmacies have to do, they have to provide consultation if you ask, and they need
Correct.
to explain to them what that medication can do, so you don't have contraindicated and things along those lines. Okay. But I'm looking at the one where it says about H1 gaming
Yes.
corridor. What exactly are you looking at? So that they have to explain to the consumer that they're not allowed to take that onto a gaming property because it jeopardizes? Is that what you're envisioning there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That we want the retail stores to have enough education to explain what the applicable laws are.
Okay.
With the prohibition on the H1 quarter, Las Vegas gaming quarter, also educating them on any prohibitions and laws related to the aviation system.
Okay, and then I'm thinking of dwelling units and public housing. How are they going to know as a business that someone may be in public housing where they're not allowed to smoke at all, let alone, I mean, I don't know, I'm just,
Is this education to interrupt? I'm sorry, Commissioner, in the form of a pamphlet they're handing out, or brochure? Or are they gonna? They're not gonna verbally tell everybody. Do you guys have plans? Does somebody know what's?
Yeah. Signs, brochures, education, and also the Las Vegas Medical Marijuana
Signs and
Association is probably going to be working with a broad group of us to have a community-wide marketing campaign.
it's just that the last line says that a report detailing this, so it doesn't speak to that. So that's part of why I was asking that. And it makes sense to have a consistent piece for everybody to be able to use, probably in English, Spanish, and Tagalog to start with. But the chambers can probably help with translations and some things along those lines. But if you're going to do it, we probably need to make sure we do it right. Mr. Sibley.
Scott Sibley, our vision is to do something similar to like gaming has when the fun stops.
Gotcha.
So as the industry and the Green Ribbon, we want to continue to further that.
That makes good sense. Page 35. Sorry. Circle page 35, but I need to, the hearing process, Jacqueline.
Yes.
It goes to a hearing officer,
Yes.
and then if it's adverse, the licensee, then the next step is to go to court. We're not involved in any place, and I just wasn't sure if, as a board, did we want to be, not want to be? Is that an adequate due process for folks? Is it the fifth time that you do something wrong versus the first time? You want to make sure that we balance that out. So that's kind of my questions in general on that section.
We put, once again, Jacqueline Holloway, Director of Business License for the record, we put the same hearing officer requirement as we do with our privileged liquor and gaming licenses. So we're treating marijuana as a privilege. And so I do have the ability to do an emergency suspension order or a temporary suspension order. And so therefore we have this process in place so that the licensees will be able to show cause.
Okay, thank you. And then, were the May 8th temporary retail marijuana by the Department of Taxation, have those been adopted, or are they still down the temporary part?
They have been adopted.
They have
the
been adopted.
temporary regulations
The
have been adopted.
temporaries, not the permanent.
That is
Okay.
correct.
And then in section 7, or item 71, we're eliminating on the very there's no page numbers, I apologize on this one, but we are eliminating medical marijuana establishment throughout all of that because that now just only pertains to retail. It was the definitions section. And I just have a really dumb question, Mr. Jolly or Scott, you may be able.
Somebody's got to answer that question. Sorry.
Yeah, she's getting the page.
No, she's getting a drink of water.
Oh.
Nancy's got the page.
I have to answer 71. Again, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just in the very section, we're deleting all the references to medical marijuana establishment, and that's because this item solely focuses on the retail component, correct?
So we're deleting all the references in production, cultivation, and the laboratories because marijuana is marijuana from a land use standpoint. Jacqueline may regulate it differently from a business license standpoint. And then we still are, the medical marijuana is still at the dispensary, and then the retail is going to be the retail store for marijuana. So that's why we're trying to be very cognizant of these stores, whether it be a dispensary or retail, but knowing that we're, from a land use standpoint, if it's appropriate to grow, produce, or check, we're not, from a land use standpoint, we're not going to go and look to see
You're not going to
what
be impacted on that
that's-
part. So back to the room thing, you could even do, what do we call the little accordions? I mean, there's different ways. We just need to coordinate with our building department. It's just more to just, there may be a way to just pull something if somebody requests. So there's just some different ways to be able to implement that, similar to what they've done in many of the pharmacies around town. So that's just another thought. In addition, so can a medical licensee that's licensed currently that goes into retail if we approve it, can they then undo after the next 18 months and don't have to do medical any longer?
Do you mean after the next 18 months, just do total retail?
Just straight retail.
I would recommend that when they get their retail, you put a condition on there that does not allow that, or that if they want to go total retail, they would have to come back and get a different use permit or something to that
I'm
effect.
just throwing that
From a
out
land
because
use
it's an
standpoint.
interesting mix, because we're able to do it so that those that are already working right now can at least have that opportunity, but then someone else comes in and says, forget it, I'm not going to spend all my money and time on that, I'm just going to do straight retail. It kind of puts people at a disadvantage that have invested, and so I'm just throwing that out as a conversation piece maybe at this point, but although all stores are supposed to be able to accommodate a medical, even under the new retail scheme, correct?
So, John Ritter for the record. So,
Sorry, John.
the way that it's working right now is the only retail establishments that will be approved are dual-use retail establishments. The permanent regulations need to be written by the end of the year, and then applications will be taken at the beginning of next year. Although the IP1 states that a license expires in 1 year, so those dispensaries that were approved in the early start will not be up for renewal until a year from when they were approved. But legally, what you're saying could happen at the state level. Someone doesn't have to, if they have a retail license, they wouldn't have to then go and reapply for a medical license. So if it's your desire in the county that dual-use facilities stay as dual-use facilities, then I think you've got to make that clear.
And maybe that's something the Green Ribbon Committee could take up, because it's not pertinent necessarily to this, but it is something that we're going to have to wrestle with, especially as we want to make sure that our medical patients still get their meds. And so that's why I raised the issue.
And as Mr. Warhola noted, that we might be readdressing the ordinance as time goes on and the state regulations change. So that might be something that we could look up if we do an update of our existing ordinance.
John Ritter for the record. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, Commissioner. I just wanted to let you know that through the task force and working group process, a lot of the concerns that are being expressed about making sure that the medical program and medical patients are prioritized are made it into a number of different recommendations that went to and were approved by the task force. So the conversations you're having here are very consistent with the conversations that had at the state level.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Bless you. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kirkpatrick, I don't know how many you have, but I've got 2 or 3 minutes so you can get started. How's that? You're going to start now, and then you're going to end it, and then you're going to start it. So go ahead. And then I apologize, everybody. We're going to have to take a recess. We've got a public auction of some land parcels. We have to do at 1 o'clock. Then we're coming back to these 2 issues. So you're all welcome to visit our cafeteria. There's meats. If you got 4, go ahead. Motion passes. We are in recess.